Let me tell you a secret. The people who drain you the most are usually the ones who say, "We're family." I learned this not all at once, but drop by drop. Every unacknowledged favor, every quiet betrayal wrapped in a smile. This is not a story about revenge. It's a story about release. And it begins, like most heartbreaks do, with love given too freely and never returned. I built Collins and Moore from a spare bedroom and a secondhand desk into a luxury home goods empire worth $87 million. Our signature line, walnut cabinetry with antique bronze inlays, sits in the kitchens of celebrities, senators, and Silicon Valley billionaires. We have offices in 4 cities, a Manhattan showroom, and a contract pending with an international hotel chain worth $22.4 million annually. And yet, on Sunday afternoons, I still sat on my parents' plastic-covered floral couch in their drafty living room, being scolded like a child for not calling often enough. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 62. I own 3 properties, have no debt, and employ 187 people. But I am, inexplicably, the family disappointment. At least, that's the script I've been handed my whole life. The year I turned 60, I bought myself a penthouse overlooking Central Park. It has floor-to-ceiling windows, Carrara marble counters, and a climate-controlled wine cellar with exactly 72 bottles, one for each of my favorite weeks. It cost $9.8 million. I didn't blink. And yet, Gerald and Patricia Collins, my parents, both in their 80s, insist on reminding me, you wouldn't have made it without the values we taught you. They live in the family estate outside Westchester. I pay the property taxes, $38,600 a year. The gardener, the nurse, the private driver, all covered by me, quietly, reliably. They've never said thank you, not once. Then there's Arthur, my younger brother by 4 years, though you wouldn't guess it from the way he shuffles around in loafers he hasn't cleaned since 2003. He runs a consulting business, which is code for emailing potential clients from our childhood basement and waiting for Margaret to bail him out when the mortgage on his rental house lapses. He's borrowed $412,000 from me over the last decade. I say borrowed the way you might say borrowed time. There was never any intention of repayment. Sylvia, the baby of the family, is worse. She smiles while she sharpens the knives. Envious, always. My success is a constant reminder of her compromises, the teaching job she left, the dreams she shelved. She married Peter Rowe, a good man, unfortunately for her taste in power plays. She texts me once a month. "Hey sis, hope you're well. Any chance you could cover M's tuition this semester? We're just a little tight." The little tight is $27,000 at NYU. This is the 3rd semester in a row. I sent it. Of course I did. I love Emily. That's the problem. On the outside, we looked like a tight-knit family. Holidays together. Matching sweaters one Christmas. Sylvia posted it all on social media. Grateful for family. Behind closed doors, I was the bank, the therapist, the guilt-drenched scapegoat. The tipping point came softly. At my mother's 80th birthday dinner, a grand affair I organized and paid for at the plaza, $146,000 from catering to room bookings, she stood up to give a speech. Everyone clapped. She thanked Arthur for keeping the family name strong, praised Sylvia for raising such a beautiful daughter. She even gave a nod to Peter for being the rock. Me? Not a word. I smiled through the tightness in my chest, sipped my Chardonnay, applauded like everyone else, but something shifted. Not an earthquake. More like the slow, inevitable turning of a key in a lock I didn't know was there. That night, Back in my penthouse, I stared at the skyline and asked myself something I hadn't dared before. If they didn't share my blood, would I still let them treat me this way? The answer came the next morning, clear as spring light. No. And for the first time in decades, I started to consider what my life might look like if I stopped trying to earn love from people who had no intention of giving it freely. What would it mean to stop playing the role? To stop funding the illusion? To stop apologizing for being the only one who never needed saving? The real story, I realized, hadn't begun yet, but it was about to. Betrayal doesn't always come with a knife or a scream. Sometimes it's in the silence after a favor granted, in the polite thank you never spoken, in the family dinners where you pay the bill and no one meets your eye. I wish I could tell you I woke up one day and everything was clear. But that's not how it happened. It came in waves, uneven, disorienting, a slow drowning in daylight. It started with a spreadsheet. One afternoon, I was preparing documentation for a new investment, an eco-luxury line we were developing in Bali. I needed to pull my personal financial history for due diligence. Normally, I'd glance it over and hand it off to my accountant, but something, call it intuition, made me linger. Line by line, year by year. The numbers told a story I'd never dared to read. Over the past 10 years alone, I had transferred $412,000 to Arthur under various labels: bridge loan, temporary cash flow, equipment investment. $318,000 to Sylvia, disguised as tuition help, home repair emergencies, unexpected medical costs. $268,000 to my parents for household expenses, which included a $38,000 renovation to their kitchen. It's embarrassing to host guests in such an old space, my mother said. A $24,000 upright Steinway they don't know how to play. A home should have culture. And a $9,000 monthly stipend I was auto-depositing into an account labeled Collins Estate Trust, a trust that didn't legally exist. All of it unspoken. No signed agreements, no terms, just love, right? Just family. The real dagger came from my attorney, Cynthia. She was reviewing my estate plan when she paused, leaned back in her chair, and said, "Margaret, I have to ask, are you aware that Arthur recently leveraged your name for a private line of credit?" I blinked. "What?" She turned her monitor toward me. There it was, an application with my name, Margaret Elise Collins, listed as financial guarantor for a business loan. $250,000. Approved. Disbursed. My signature had been forged. Sloppily. I stared at the screen, cold settling into my chest like cement. "And Sylvia?" I asked quietly. Cynthia hesitated. She took out an educational grant for Emily, using a co-signed document supposedly signed by you. That one may have legal consequences. You're listed as responsible if her GPA falls below 3.0. My pulse slowed to a crawl. And it has? She dropped below last semester. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and pulled out every receipt, wire transfer, and bank statement I could find. I didn't sleep. I sat at my long oak table, papers spread like bones across the surface, Laura on speakerphone half the night. "Margie," she said gently, "you've given them over $1 million. I laughed. It came out broken. 1.4, actually, I corrected. She was quiet for a moment. "And what have they given you?" I didn't have an answer. I started listening differently after that. Really listening. Arthur called 2 days later. "Mags, hey, you wouldn't believe the opportunity that just landed in my lap. This startup in Miami is looking for a partner with cash on hand. I could double your investment. Quick turnaround. I asked, "What happened with the last 3?" He paused. "Well, you know how startups go." I didn't answer, just stared at the speaker. Silence bloomed like a bruise between us. "Margaret," he said, his tone sharpening. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. He hung up with a clipped, "Let me know." Sylvia's betrayal hurt differently. She used kindness like a fishing line, baited me with concern, reeled me in with guilt. She called one evening under the pretense of checking in. "You've been quiet lately," she said sweetly. I miss you. And Emily's really struggling without the tutoring sessions. If there's any way you could—" I interrupted. "Sylvia, why did you forge my signature?" Dead silence. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "I've seen the documents. I've spoken with the bank. I know about the GPA clause. I know everything." She switched tactics with terrifying speed. "Margaret, I was trying to protect you. You always say yes. I didn't want to burden you with the details. You're so busy." "So you decided to fake my consent?" Her voice cracked then. "I was desperate. You have so much. You don't even feel it." There it was. The truth. You don't even feel it. As if I were a vending machine for their lives. A dispenser of grace, without face or fatigue. I paid for a forensic accountant. Quietly. Discreetly. I asked him to map every dollar I had sent to anyone in my family for the past 20 years. The final report was 76 pages long. Annotated, cross-referenced, indexed. I printed every single one. Bound them in leather. Labeled the cover, Margaret Collins, Contributions to the Collins Family 2002 to 2024. Laura helped me organize the rest. Emails, screenshots, voice messages, a mosaic of deceit. I wasn't preparing for revenge. I was preparing for revelation. I wasn't going to beg for love anymore. I wasn't going to fund my own erasure. And I certainly wasn't going to stay silent at the reunion this year. Next month, the entire Collins family would gather at the estate for our annual reunion. The guest list had already gone out. I paid the caterers last week, $62,000 for gourmet coastal fare and an open bar. Arthur had requested steak. Patricia wanted floral arrangements flown in from Italy. I would smile. I would serve drinks. I would give my toast. And then I would burn the script we'd all been pretending to follow. The Collins family reunion always had the same formula. A catered lunch under the tent in the West Garden, a round of speeches, and my father pretending to hate the attention while demanding more of it. This year was no different. Not on the surface. The tent was up, the linens were white, and the champagne was Dom Perignon because nothing else tastes like money, according to Patricia. The guest list was 53 names long. Cousins from Vermont, nephews I hadn't seen in years, Sylvia's college friend who somehow never left. Everyone smiled, hugged, clinked glasses. I watched it all from the balcony of the upstairs library, the one room in the estate I'd secretly funded the renovation for back in 2011, $128,000 for oak paneling, velvet curtains, and a hidden minibar. Fitting, I thought. This room had been paid for in silence. I wore navy blue that day, clean, crisp, understated. My folder was in matching leather. Inside, everything. The forged signatures, the financial reports, the bank transfers, screenshots of messages. Arthur asking for bridge funds while gambling in Atlantic City, Sylvia venting about me in emails accidentally forwarded by her own daughter. A voice message from Gerald saying, "You wouldn't really let your parents live like common people, would you?" And Patricia's infamous phone call where she told Laura, unaware she was on speaker, "Margaret was always too soft. Guilt works best on her. It's the only currency she believes in." I had it all, and I wasn't angry. Not yet. That would come. "Ladies and gentlemen," my father announced from under the tent, tapping a glass like a ship captain christening a lie. "Welcome to the 18th Annual Collins Family Reunion, where we celebrate heritage, unity, and generosity." There was a chuckle through the crowd. I walked across the lawn just as he said it. Generosity. Perfect timing. "Ah, here she is," he beamed. "The family's guardian angel, Margaret. Come join us up front, dear." I did. My heels clicked softly against the stone path. The summer air smelled like lavender and roasted lamb. Everyone applauded, some too hard, most without looking directly at me. The performance was seamless, but this time I was not part of the cast. "Before the toasts," I said, taking the mic gently from my father, "I'd like to share something a little different this year." Laughter. A few confused glances. I smiled. Calm. Steady. "We've celebrated so many things over the years. Births, graduations, new jobs. But this year, I want to celebrate something else." I lifted the leather folder and set it gently on the table next to me. "The truth." A few people stiffened. My mother's smile dropped half a centimeter. "I've spent the past few months compiling a history, a different kind of family album, one made of numbers, emails, voice memos, and patterns." I opened the folder and began to read. "In 2014, Arthur borrowed $68,000 for a small business venture. He promised to repay it in 12 months. He never did." Arthur cleared his throat. "Margaret, this isn't." In 2016, Sylvia requested $18,000 for what she called dental emergencies. In the same month, she bought a secondhand Mercedes and posted about it online. Sylvia's mouth parted. "That's irrelevant. That car was for Peter. In 2018, I paid for the full tuition of Emily Rowe at NYU. Sylvia, you signed my name on a GPA contingent loan application without my consent." The crowd shifted. Peter's face changed instantly, shocked, not angry. A good man, caught in a tangle he didn't weave. I continued, my voice steady, my hands not shaking. "Between 2002 and 2024, I have given this family $1.42 million in direct support. That includes real estate taxes, car leases, hospital bills, down payments, loans, tuition, interest-free credit, and cash gifts. None of it was repaid. None of it was acknowledged." No one moved. I let the silence breathe. Let them feel the shape of it. "Mom, Dad, you receive $9,000 a month from me. That's $108,000 a year. When I asked last year if you needed to downsize, you said I was being cruel. When I asked Arthur and Sylvia to begin contributing to your care, you said I was being divisive." My mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I'm not here to shame anyone," I said. "I'm here because I can no longer live inside a lie." I placed the microphone back down on the table. Peter stood up, slowly. "Margaret," he said, voice low, "you don't have to say another word. You've done enough. More than enough." For a second, just a second, I felt tears prick my eyes, but I swallowed them. Not yet. Sylvia was shaking. Arthur had gone pale. My parents said nothing. I wasn't done. Silence, thick as velvet, blanketed the tent. My mother was the first to break it. Not with words, but with that brittle, fragile sigh she'd mastered decades ago, the sound of a woman choosing to appear wounded rather than cornered. "Margaret," she said softly, too softly. "We're your family." She might as well have called me a traitor. Arthur stood. "Okay, that's enough. You've made your little speech, but you're twisting everything. You think we're leeches? You think we haven't sacrificed things too? Sacrifices? I asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. He stepped forward, finger pointed, voice rising. You've always thrown money at people and called it love. You think it makes you better than us? You think we asked for your success? No, I said. You never asked. You expected. Gasps echoed lightly. So many cousins, aunts, family friends who suddenly weren't sure where to look. Do you want to talk about expectations, Arthur? I asked. I picked up another sheet from my folder. Shall I read the email you sent me in January asking for $50,000 because your soul needed a sabbatical from stress after you lost money in crypto? Laughter this time. A sharp, cutting sound. Someone at the back clapped once, quickly stopped. Arthur's face burned crimson. That was private. You sent it to me and mistakenly CC'd your ex-wife, I replied. She forwarded it with annotations. I met his eyes then, not with anger, with the calm devastation of someone who'd finally stopped hoping they'd be seen. Do you remember when I paid for your divorce lawyer? I asked quietly. You told everyone it was a personal loan from your mentor. He didn't reply. He couldn't. Then, from the far end of the tent, Peter stood up. Sylvia, he said, turning toward his wife. Is it true? She didn't respond. Her lips pressed together like she was holding her breath. Is it true that you forged Margaret's name on a loan document? Sylvia turned, slow and shaking. Peter, this isn't the place. It's exactly the place, he said. She deserved to be heard. And if even half of what she said is true, then I've been standing beside a liar for years. His voice broke. Just a little. Enough. Sylvia's eyes welled with tears, but she said nothing. Not denial. Not apology. My parents, still seated, still silent, stared blankly. Gerald looked aged in that moment. Smaller. His eyes didn't meet mine. I looked down at the final sheet in my folder. The last card. The one I'd debated bringing. A copy of my parents' second will. They thought I didn't know. But I'd found it, tucked into the filing cabinet of their estate lawyer when she retired, and sent me boxes of keepsakes. The original will had left their estate split evenly between us 3 children. But the second showed their full estate, valued conservatively at $7.6 million, split 45% to Arthur, 45% to Sylvia, and just 10% to me. No explanation, no conditions, just the quiet knife of betrayal, inked and notarized. I held it up now. For those wondering, I said, voice still even, this is the amended will of my parents. The one where they decided that despite me funding their lives for over a decade, I should receive the smallest share of what's left. A gasp, then a murmur, then anger, not from me, but from the crowd. You're making a scene, my mother hissed. You're humiliating us. No, I said, my voice like iron wrapped in silk. I'm revealing what you all kept hidden behind your smiles and traditions. I'm not the one who humiliated you. You did that yourselves. People began to rise from their seats, some awkwardly slipping away, some coming toward me with hands on my shoulder, muttered words of support. Aunt Cecilia hugged me tightly. I never knew, she whispered. I thought you liked being the one who gave. I did, I wanted to tell her. Once. Before it became an obligation, before it became expected, before love turned into invoices. That night, I didn't go back to my usual suite in the main house. I went to the guest house, the one I had built, tucked behind the magnolia trees, designed as a quiet retreat for guests. Laura was waiting there with a glass of wine and a warm, silent embrace. How do you feel? She asked after a while. I looked out the window, where the lights of the estate twinkled like something out of a fairy tale, but I knew better now. I feel, I said slowly, like I've just burned down a house that was already on fire. She smiled sadly. And what's next? I sipped the wine, rebuilding, but this time, on my terms. The sun had barely cracked the horizon when I received the first knock at the door. I was in a robe, barefoot, staring into the steam of my coffee, still drained from the night before. The guest house was quiet, Laura still asleep in the spare room. I opened the door to find Patricia, my mother, standing on the porch like a statue carved from frost. No makeup, no pearls, just a pale cardigan draped over her shoulders, knotted tightly at the front. "May I come in?" I nodded. Wordlessly, I stepped aside. She moved slowly, sitting at the edge of the couch like she feared breaking it. Her fingers trembled as she clasped them in her lap. "I didn't know about the account," she said after a pause. "The one Arthur drained. I thought it was just part of what you offered." I said nothing. She looked up at me with those fragile blue eyes, so often used to soften resistance. "You've always been strong, Margaret. The strong ones, they don't need as much." Ah, there it was. I sat across from her and chose my words like I was diffusing a bomb. "Mother, strength doesn't mean invisibility. It doesn't mean silence. And it certainly doesn't mean I owe you my life." Tears welled, but I wasn't moved. I had seen this performance before. Polished, dignified grief that somehow redirected guilt toward the recipient. "We did what we thought was right," she whispered. "No," I said, voice sharper now. "You did what was easy. You leaned on the one daughter who wouldn't scream, and then you convinced yourselves I liked it." Later that morning, Arthur called. I let it ring. Then he texted, "Let's not do this through lawyers. It doesn't have to be war." I blocked the number. The emails came next. Sylvia wrote a lengthy apology, carefully worded, no direct admissions, a masterpiece of passive regret. "I wish we could have talked about this before it became so public. I'm sorry if you ever felt unappreciated. We're family, and nothing should come between that." I drafted my reply 3 times before deleting it all. Instead, I contacted my estate lawyer. Within a week, we filed paperwork to formalize a complete withdrawal of financial obligation. Every loan was now labeled as forgiven under duress, accompanied by notarized statements and digital archives proving the exploitation patterns. I revoked a power of attorney I had once signed over to Gerald during his bypass surgery. I hired an independent accountant to audit every transaction linked to my family's use of my name or credit since 2003. And then, most quietly, most devastatingly, I had my financial firm send a letter to the family trust's board. Margaret Collins will no longer serve as informal guarantor for any familial requests. All future requests for financial assistance must pass through independent review and will not be endorsed under her name. A small paragraph. A seismic shift. Peter came to see me that Friday, awkward in his denim jacket and looking older than usual. "I just wanted to say thank you," he began, "for not burning Sylvia in public." I raised an eyebrow. "I mean," he stammered, "you could have exposed the forged document to everyone. But you didn't." "She's still the mother of your children," I replied, "and I still love my niece and nephew." He gave me a long look. "You deserved better, Margaret. We all took you for granted." I didn't reply, just gave him a sad smile and poured him some iced tea. That weekend, the ripple effects spread further than I expected. Cousin Meredith called from Boston. She was kind, awkwardly supportive, said she'd always suspected something was off. Uncle Harvey sent a formal apology letter, typed and signed, confessing his complicity in family denial. A handful of younger cousins unfollowed Arthur and Sylvia on social media and messaged me to say I had inspired them to start setting boundaries too. It was surreal, strange, vindicating in small, painful ways. The biggest surprise came from Laura. We were sitting in the garden, autumn leaves curling at our feet, when she said, "You know, there's a beach house up in Mendocino I've been looking at. Quiet. Empty. Maybe it's time for us to do something new." I looked at her, startled. "Us?" She shrugged. "You've built empires, Margaret, companies, a life of obligation. Maybe now it's time to build peace." It hit me then. How long I'd stayed rooted in service, not freedom. Even my most beautiful things had been built as shields. "I'd like that," I said, voice catching in my throat. "I'd like that very much." On the day I left the estate, I walked the old garden path one last time. My suitcase rolled behind me, my steps quiet. Gerald sat under the arbor, watching the koi pond, his expression unreadable. He didn't look up as I passed, but he said without turning, "You've changed." I paused beside him. Let the wind move between us. "No," I said, "you're just finally seeing me." And with that, I walked away. They say silence is the loudest form of protest. But peace? Peace is louder. It resounds in every corner of your soul where chaos once whispered. 3 months after the reunion, the world had reshaped itself around me. I sold the lake house. Yes, that one. The so-called family getaway I had paid nearly $2.3 million to renovate and maintain over the years. No more scheduled visits. No more guilt-tripped weekends or tension masquerading as tradition. It was listed, staged, and sold to a quiet couple from Oregon who sent me pictures of their golden retrievers on the dock. I bought a cliffside cottage in Mendocino. 2 bedrooms, 1 study. Endless ocean. Laura helped me decorate it, slowly, lovingly. We chose warm wood, soft throws, art that made us laugh. There was no grand plan, just joy, piece by piece. The nights were still at first, a little too quiet. I'd grown used to the emotional static of a life lived pleasing others. But as the days stretched into one another, a rhythm emerged. I began waking up without dread, reading entire books without my phone in hand, cooking meals for one without apology. Arthur called. Once. He left a voicemail I never responded to. "We're trying to downsize. Thought maybe you'd want to invest in the old firm. I mean, it's still the family name." It was almost funny. Almost. I forwarded it to my lawyer, then blocked the number again. I heard through a third cousin that Sylvia had started seeing a therapist. She'd cut her hair short, dramatically so, and joined some women's leadership course in the city. Peter and the kids were doing well, and I hoped she was too, truly. But I wasn't going to check. That wasn't my job anymore. Even Patricia had changed in her own way. One afternoon, I received a handwritten letter on thick ivory paper. "I spent too many years believing sacrifice was love and manipulation was protection. I was wrong. I hope someday you'll let me apologize in person. But if not, I understand. You deserve your peace." I cried when I read it. Not because I forgave her, not yet, but because she finally understood that she had something to be forgiven for. That, in itself, was progress. I started mentoring young women entrepreneurs through a nonprofit incubator in the city. Bright, driven minds with fire in their eyes. Women who reminded me of myself before the world taught me to be small at the dinner table. One day, after a speaking event, a young woman approached me and said, "You talk about boundaries like they're power, not punishment. I smiled. Because they are, I told her. Boundaries are the map back to yourself. She teared up. I hugged her. In that moment, I realized that what my family once took from me, validation, space, dignity, was no longer theirs to give or withhold. I had reclaimed it all. And so, if you're still here, still listening to my story, maybe you're carrying your own silent battles. Maybe you're the Margaret in someone else's life, quietly giving, endlessly dependable, invisible until you refuse to be. I want you to know this. You are allowed to stop shrinking yourself for people who never learned how to make room. You are allowed to say no, even if it shakes the ground beneath you. And you are allowed to walk away, not because you don't love them, but because you finally love yourself enough to let go. Thank you for being part of it with me. If this story touched you, made you reflect, or helped you in any way, please, like the video, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful narratives that speak to the soul. Until next time, be kind to yourself, be brave, and always, always choose peace over performance.